You're listening to The Women in the Arena. I'm your host, Paige Rene, former collegiate athlete turned leadership entrepreneur for women just like you. Each week, I'm bringing you a new person or message to help you expand and elevate into the woman you know you're meant to be. Now, let's step into the arena. Hello, Women in the Arena. We are back for another solo episode where I am sharing love versus fear decision making. Now, I remember when I was younger, my mom would always tell me, write your pros and cons list. What are the things that are good about this decision? What are the things that are quote unquote bad about this decision? And when I started coaching, love versus fear decision making was really one of those pivotal ways to use your mindset to evaluate, is this a decision I'm making out of love for myself and where I'm going and for my growth? Or is this a decision that I'm making out of fear? So we're going to talk about that today. But I have to ask you guys, are you seeing all of this crazy Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift news? Like, I'm kind of over it. And at the point where this comes out, I really do hope that it's watered down, but it is everywhere. And so I'm like, did I click an algorithm into one that shows this everywhere, or is that really this big? And then why is that? If this is Taylor's plan, which I do believe she's a marketing genius, obviously we're on the first name basis, and I'm not even a Swiftie, I've told you guys that. But if this is her plan to come off this massive tour and then date somebody in the prime of their NFL season, hands down, that's brilliant. I don't know. What do you guys think? Back to our episode for today. I just had to vet on that. But I want to tell you guys why I started this work, because it really leads into the episode. So people around me would talk so much about the things that they wanted, the relationship, the job, the career, the freedom to travel. But that's literally where it would stop. Like, I felt like people around me were just talking about those things and not doing anything about it. They wouldn't truly go for these things. And maybe that's fair, because now that I've coached thousands of women through decision making, I know that there's two things that really hold you back. But at the time, I didn't know that. And I really set out to be that person that bridges the gap, right? If you're on island A, like my coach says, you tell me where you're at right now, and then you tell me where you want to be on island B, then I'm going to help get you there with some proven tools with consistency, accountability, mindset, motivation, and help you understand where you're at so that you can get where you want to be. So that's where love versus fear decision-making comes in, is it's your way to evaluate where you are in terms of a big decision. So I have to first explain a little bit about your brain. So the average human, there's some differing science on this, but overall, the average human has about 60,000 thoughts a day, which seems like a ton. There's thoughts in your conscious mind, then there's thoughts in your subconscious mind. I mean, think about when you wake up from a dream and the next morning you're like, what the heck? Where did that come from? That actually happened to me this morning as I'm telling you this. Of those 60,000 thoughts, 80% are useless and or negative. What useless means is they're thoughts that just aren't really going to help you. You're worrying about what you should have done better, and you're thinking about regret, or you're thinking about something and anticipating it happening in the future when it doesn't exist yet. Or you're doubting yourself, or you're trying to assume what somebody else is going to say or think. In coaching, we talk about 3 lanes. Your lane, there's other people's lane, which we really like to be in. And then there's the universe's lane, like trying to predict the future. And your job is to really stay in your lane as much as possible, because that's what's going to help your happiness, contentment, and peace. So back to your thoughts. Of those 80% that are useless, 90% of those 60,000 thoughts are repetitive, because your brain's very efficient. It's trying to get the quickest way from point A to point B, which is usually a straight line, which is often the road very much traveled when it comes to the way you make decisions. An analogy I used to use is, if you've ever been in the snow, let's say you're standing at your front door and you're trying to walk to your mailbox. If there's a fresh layer of snow, you're going to walk in a straight line to your mailbox. You're not trying to stay out in the cold too long. Grab your mail and walk that same straight line back. Let's say you repeat that 5 more times the next 5 days to go to the mailbox. That snow is going to be packed down and hard, And you're not going to travel outside of that trail. You're going to go keep going there and back through that trail. So that's really how your brain works too. So a lot of mindset work is just rewiring the stories that you've believed and held onto for so long so that you can start to introduce yourself to new and updated information. The other thing you should know about your brain is that its job is to keep you safe and alive. And fear came from this place a long time ago where we were fearful for our lives. Do we have enough to eat? Do we have shelter? Those real life and death scenarios. Well, the way our brains think now is kind of in the same way, yet most of us aren't dealing with those life and death scenarios, hopefully and thankfully, not as often as we used to. So if you're new to mindset work, I just invite you to start noticing your thoughts. That's all you have to do. And it really starts with being what we call the nonjudgmental, unbiased observer. What that means is instead of judging yourself like, oh, idiot, I'm so stupid for thinking that way, or why would your mind go there? Instead of judging the thought process that you're having, simply be an observer. That means saying, that's interesting that I thought that way, or, okay, that's curious, that's interesting, right? So simply take notice of what you're thinking. Now, you can do this when it comes to a big decision in your life as well, which is what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'll give you a real life example from one of my clients. So let's say you are up for a promotion and the decision on the table is, should I apply for this internal promotion? We walk through love versus fear decision-making in 2 simple steps. So we're first going to look at all of the thoughts. And remember, you're being the non-judgmental, unbiased observer, and you're just simply looking at what's coming up for you. You can think about it, but my favorite way to do this is to write bullet point style in my journal. And also, side note, if I'm talking to a friend or processing this with somebody close to me, like a family member, I'm going to notice things come up more often. And so sometimes I'll add those to the journal. I'm definitely more of a out loud talker when I'm working through something. And I also use my journal. So this particular client was deciding, should I apply for this internal promotion? And we worked through some of the initial thoughts coming up. Now there's a lot of them. Remember, you have about 60,000 thoughts a day, but I'm going to share a couple with you that she said were coming up for her. Okay. So number one, the company probably already has the person in mind that they want to hire. She said, we do need women in positions of leadership in this company. She said, I'm too old for this promotion. I am overqualified for what I'm currently doing. What if they're disappointed with my performance when I'm in that position? And she said, I want to be in a leadership role. What if when I join the leadership team, they don't like my input? So those are some of the thoughts that she shared. And I know as female women leaders listening to this, you can probably already start to characterize those thoughts. And it's so much easier to do that objectively. If I was making a big decision, I would definitely need an objective perspective to help me move through it. Okay, don't panic, but we have just over 3 months left of 2023. I was reading the letter I wrote to myself in December of 2022 the other day and thought, oh boy, I need to get going. There are still some goals that are left on the table to grab. If you're with me, you definitely don't have to do this alone. Join me for your Elevation Era. This is a 6-week activation for women leaders of all ages. You are going to turn your ideas into action. Finally, you're going to go from maybe one day to holy crap, I did it. Each week for 6 weeks, you get an exclusive training, a private community of women leaders, and a coaching call with me. But listen, we are not just talking here. We're putting these ideas into motion, so you'll also get specific action items to work through each week. And we start October 2nd. Grab your spot through the link in the show notes right now. This is a foundation rate and will not be offered again. I'll see you inside. So we'll go through these with her. They probably already have the person they want to hire is more of a fear-based mindset because you're fearful that you're not going to be picked. Nobody likes rejection, no matter where it is. You're probably fearful that you're not going to be picked, and nobody likes rejection, no matter what kind it is. And then we moved to the statement, we need women in positions of leadership in this company. Now, I have been working with her for a while, so I knew that she was really desiring more female leadership in the company. And I said, yeah, why not you? And so this came from a place of love, knowing that there needs to be women leadership. And then she said, I'm too old for this promotion. That's certainly just a fear, right? Because who gets to decide who's too old? I'll explain some more about this decision-making here in a moment. I just want to go through and categorize these for you. She also said, I'm overqualified for what I'm currently doing. And the backside of that was that she wanted to be challenged more. And this would certainly bring more of a challenge if she applied for this promotion. So that is really a decision based in love for herself. She said, what if they're disappointed with my performance? Of course, that's pretty easy to establish that that's a fear-based thought. But when you're in the middle of it, when you're swimming in the pool with this decision, you're thinking about all these thoughts, it's really hard to categorize that for yourself until you really get it down on paper. She said, I want to be in a leadership role. Well, that's definitely love for who she is and her growth in the company. And then she said, what if when I join the leadership team, they don't like my input? Of course, that's fear because that's a what if scenario. So again, you can put these two in those two categories. Is this a place of love? Is this a place of fear? Now, from here, you will get closer to what the most loving decision is for yourself, even if it's the scary decision. Couple things to note about this. There are real fears, as we mentioned before, but real fears are life or death usually. And most things that you're dealing with in terms of making decisions in your life are not life and death. You can simply ask yourself, is this a matter of life and death? And where does this fear come from? Most times fear comes from not feeling worthy enough or not feeling confident enough or caring a lot about what somebody else thinks. And all of those are real. You just have to know whether they're coming from a place of fear or a place of love. And then also, you're not a fortune teller. So you have to remember that. We all love to be fortune tellers. And I catch myself trying to do that all the time, where I'll anticipate something that's going to happen after a decision I make. And I practice only looking at the best case scenario. I practice looking for the best case scenario. Yes, of course, my mind's going to default to some obstacles, some roadblocks. But if you're going to think about the worst case scenario, why can't you envision the best case scenario either? The more you can get in that vibration, the more open you are to receiving the best case scenario too. And then your thoughts are not facts. They're not all facts, but sometimes people walk around believing that it's true. Going back to a money mentality example, I did a lot of work early on in my business with my own mindset and money mentality. And I used to believe the idea that I'm not good with money. I picked that story up somewhere when I was younger. And I also picked up the story, money burns a hole through my pocket. And so I realized doing that money mentality work that those were thoughts that I was operating as if they were facts. And that just simply wasn't true. Facts can be proven in the court of law. Thoughts are dependent on who's thinking them and who's sharing them. So remember that too. And the next time you go into making a big decision, I really invite you to write out your thoughts, look at them as a non-judgmental, unbiased observer, and then categorize them in places of love and fear and see what comes up for you. See if you are willing to move in a place of love versus a place of fear. You are loved, you're worthy, and most times you're capable of far more than you give yourself credit for. I hope you guys have an awesome week. I hope today's episode inspired you on your journey in the arena. Make sure to check out the show notes in the description for a rundown of today's show with all the important links. If you enjoyed this, please share with a friend. I know how much it means to me when my friends share podcasts. Leave us a review and let us know what landed with you over on Instagram at Paige_Rene15. As always, your best bet is on yourself.